Hi guys, and welcome to the next in the series of podcasts and interviews with important people at the football club, and particularly the international desk. It doesn't get any more important at our football club than the chairman, Mr. Mark Palios. So welcome, chairman. Glad to have you on.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks for the introduction as well.
It's always a little bit nerve-wracking introducing your boss, but I thought I'd let you do the talking.
Oh, it's all right, mate. I appreciate that, but I'll let you do the talking to start with. You're interviewing me.
All right, brilliant. So I had it in the introduction that I was going to say, not only just owner, but former player among a lot of other things, and scorer of 55 career goals, which came up on
58.
58 came up on an internal question quiz the other day, and Matt and I put 2, but he wanted to know that everyone that he scored 58 in his career. So
I think it was actually 60 if you count things like the Freight Rover and stuff like that. But who's counting, mate? Who's counting? Defensive midfield player as well. So I'll just put that in.
Great. I think what we're going to try and do today is just to link together a lot of the other interviews and podcasts that we did, speaking to the different departments at the club. And we're very fortunate at this football club that our chairman is heavily sort of rooted into every department and knows the inner workings of it, knows exactly what we do. Matt and I report directly to the chairman. So as we link in the other departments of the club, the chairman can have his say on what it means to have an international department at our football club. So just to kick things off, we get asked this a lot when we're out in different regions, and when anybody's asking about the international department, why Tranmere Rovers? Why does Tranmere have an international department?
It actually stems from a business reason, and when I came, one of the things that I thought we didn't do at the football club was realise what I call the organic potential of the club. That's everything that the club has that can be used. And everybody would look at the normal assets and say, yeah, you don't use your ground every day of the week and so forth, all the physical assets. But what they didn't really understand was that there are other assets as well. So, we are a British football club. We reside in what I think is a unique piece of footballing geography. And when I was chief exec of the FA, I'd go around and everybody could see that the northwest England and the northwest of England is where professional football actually started. And as a consequence, it's absolutely laced through the community here. So we have a whole host of clubs. We have a culture that is essentially, the start of British footballing culture. And what that means in a practical sense, from a coaching sense, is that in places where you want to get a good games program. So in China, if you look at China, it's going to be difficult for them to get a good games program together, which, as we all know, is an essential part in the development of kids when they get into their teens. Well, we actually have it on tap here, and we have it in such a way that we can probably grade the quality of opposition that you've got, because we've got it right from some of the top academies in the world. Four of the top academies in the world are within 20 minutes drive of here. We then got, I think, 10 of our category 1, category 2 academies within an hour's drive of here. So we have this plethora of academies at the elite end, but equally right the way down, we have the best schools associations in England and Britain. Here on Merseyside, and we also have a massive amateur clubs as well. So it doesn't matter if we bring people over for what I would call sports tourism, football tours and holidays. You can get a great games program, and equally, if you want elite development and you want to develop your teams, then you can produce an elite program as well. So for people who want to come and experience the culture of football, British football, this is fantastic. It both as an experience in visiting and tourism side, but equally on right the way through into elite side. So that was essentially why we first started the international business. And you asked me. Well, the answer is we also can give access, which, as you know, is one of the big things you can't get at other professional clubs. So for me, it was a logical place to, and I can go further into that if you wanted about what the access means, but it was a logical place for us to, again, extract the organic potential of the club. And that's why you guys came along, and you've built it since we started looking at this 4 years ago.
Yeah, well, we both started about 4 years ago, almost on the same day, and quite quickly, I think we were both shipped off to China for something we must have done. We're not too sure, but we've all been out there, and you've also been out in Inner Mongolia and in the northern parts of China, and that's where the Chinese government are dedicating a lot of resource and a lot of focus towards football development in their quest to win the World Cup. But whilst we've been over there and coached in the elite development camps down in Hainan as well, so have the likes of Borussia Dortmund and Valencia, but all these clubs have been there and it hasn't worked out for them. So why would you say it's really worked for a League Two, well, at the time we're a National League side from England in Tranmere Rovers?
It's an interesting point, and we were out talking to a Chinese educationalist out in Inner Mongolia on the basis that they would be sending kids over here for what I call football tourism for the first part of this, and it was happenstance that Inner Mongolia became the pilot province for the development of football in China, campus football, basically grassroots football. And actually, it's a sensible way for the Chinese to go about it, because they've got a massive educational system, obviously, rather than trying to reconstruct what we have in this country, which is 150 years, 160 years of sport that's rooted in our communities and a whole network of amateur clubs that we've got. For them to build that on day one is not the way to do it. So they went down through the school system, and they cottoned on to the fact that I was over there and I was the former chief exec of the FA and involved with them. And of course, the FA's coaching now is started in 2007, really, when it was brought in by Trevor Brooking, who I brought into the FA as the director of football, and he developed the four corner model, which is the core of what I would call modern British coaching, and that in itself produced. It takes about 10 years for that to rattle through a system, and so that produced kids in 2017. We became the under-17 world champions. We became the under-19 European champions, and we became the under-20 world champions, England, that is. So I think they'd recognised that the English system was something that was was, if you like, the sort of best in class modern Western coaching. And when we were in Inner Mongolia, we were dealing with those guys. When I was asked by them to look at it, I really didn't think that we had that much competition from the likes of, and we saw off the likes of Luis Figo, all the big internationals who came, because the Chinese aren't stupid. They worked out that they were there just for the fast buck and so forth. And actually, when you think about it, what do they really know about developing players? They've been a good player, but that doesn't make you a great teacher of players. And in fact, it's the other way around, usually. So we saw off all those individuals, but equally, the large clubs, again, if you look at their motivation, for them it's about selling shirts, it's about eyeballs, it's creating fans. Again, they're not into really grassroots development and the development of players in that regard. They do have obviously great academies, but it's a thin rifle shot. It's not about developing the whole system and going out beyond elite development. So they weren't really competitors, all those clubs. And our real competitors would have been the national governing bodies, and the Germans were, of course, the world champions at that point in time. But when we worked with the Chinese, and this is on a point I know we've discussed a lot, you've got to be culture friendly. And when we work with the Chinese, the Germans, as I understood it, their FA wanted a set out plan, etc. Whereas we were much more agile and fleet of foot. And whilst we could help with putting out a strategy, and we did, and I wrote a strategy for the Inner Mongolian government, and they said, "That's great, thanks very much for that, but we'd like 2 A-level coaches in Hohhot tomorrow and 3 in Hainan." And so, because it means a lot to us, we are fleet of foot. We're very much tailored, and we could respond better than the big ungainly national governing bodies. So we saw them off as well, and that's how it started in China. But 2 important things come out of that. One is that we are culture friendly, and we can deal with that in a bit. We understand cultures, and we learnt a lot by working with the Chinese. And now, as you say, we're in the States and we're in Indonesia, and we've got other plans. So that was massively important. And the other thing is, I touched on it and just say it briefly. It means a lot to us. It does mean a lot to us because, let's face it. If you're looking at one of the big clubs whose turnover, I don't know what it is these days now. Is it $500 million? I don't know. But does it make any difference to them if they make an extra £1 million here or there? No, it doesn't. But it does to us. If our playing budget's £2 million, it makes a hell of a difference to us if we can generate another £1 million. So it's important to us, and coming from that, you can get access to us as a club as well, which you can't get. You can't really go to Arsenal. Whilst some tour operators have badged themselves as Arsenal, they're not really getting into Arsenal. And we've got not only the unique footballing geography here, right on our doorstep, we've got Liverpool John Moores University. It's consistently in the top 10 sports science universities in the world. And that's literally 10 minutes away from our training ground. And as you know, they do a lot with us. Aaron, who looks after our nutrition, etc., is a master's from there and so forth. So we have access to the best sports scientists. Now, if you're looking at coaching, yes, not only can we therefore give you, the standard coaching that you would get in terms of best Western coaching, modern Western coaching, we can also give you access to how and an insight. And everybody wants to be the next Pep Guardiola, but for coaches as well, they want to see not just new sessions, which you guys have got in abundance, but they also want to see how you use analysis, how you use nutrition, how you use strength and conditioning in sports and sports psychology, and in a professional setting. And you can get that here at Tranmere, which you can't get, with all due respect to our colleagues in Liverpool and Everton, because they're big. And they have security issues and things like this, and confidentiality issues. And whilst we have confidentiality issues, they're not of the same magnitude. And we therefore give you much more access, which means that you get a really holistic experience when you come across, not just the coaching, not just the games program, but access to seeing. I mean, last season they could see Mickey planning for games. You could talk to Mickey, the manager, and so forth and so on.
Brilliant. For me, it started out us delivering outbound, and we sort of built our reputation, and we were taking the northwest of England and showcasing our abilities as a football club to deliver. And once people liked that and they liked a little taste of it, it was then a case of opening up our doors and welcoming people from, as you said, different cultures, different ways of learning, different ability levels, all the way from like a equivalent of a level 1 coach all the way through to a professional coach. And with the links that the club has with the community, it just comes across naturally for us that we're able to deliver anywhere on the spectrum. And if people want to come in from a different part of the world, want to see a different facet of our football club, it's all open to them. And I think another thing that you touched on then is sometimes the resources that we deal with. So I find that when we're talking to other practitioners at the club, we all have to work at the top limit of the resources that we're working with. And that's just to maximise every sort of facet that we possibly can. And I think when we're abroad, let's say, for example, in Mongolia, if they don't have the high-tech sports science tracking equipment, we've certainly experienced not having that. Fortunately, we have it on the first team side of things, but if there's someone in the club that knows how to get the most without having those kind of things, I think those little insights are really important for people as well. I think it would be the same when we sort of later on looked to go west, and we looked over to the States as well. I think it was in that experience of delivering, along different sides of the spectrum, from foundation all the way through to professional, that people could really appreciate where we're coming from as a football club. Would you say that there's a difference then in expectations of, whether somebody comes from the east or they come from the west and they come into the football club? How do you deal with that as a chairman when people, call in and have those experiences?
There are a couple of things in that. The first is, I think that, what I just said about it means more to us, and therefore people get more attention. It's something you see in business sometimes. You can either be, a customer or a supplier to. You can have either Marks and Spencer, and they take a massive amount of your book, or you can have smaller. You'd be a smaller business and actually get more attention. It's just, to me, it's a question of, that's common sense, and I think that it doesn't take people long to suss that out. That you will get people who are coming to. I spoke to one. Premier League club and said, in terms of their international business, I said to him, what's your level of turnover? And he said £1 million. No, that doesn't even push the dial. It never registers on the desk of the chief exec of that particular club, because they're a top Premier League club. So, that that's somewhere in the bowels of the organisation. It's not going to be that important. But as I say, in China, they quickly got the message. They understood that, it meant a lot to us, and therefore, they were happy to work with us. We signed a 3-year memorandum as a consequence of that. So your point was, how do you deal with that? I think people get that. They understand that quite simply, that they will get better attention in that regard. There is one area though that I think it's quite difficult, and this is that everybody automatically, when I was at the FA, everybody thought you thought about the FA and you thought about the England team and the professional game. Everybody just focused and gravitated towards that. But what they didn't know was you're looking after 40,000 clubs at the FA. And again, when people look at a professional club, they're saying, well, because when we started this, don't forget, we were non-league. And we'd been relegated into, after years in the Football League, we've been relegated into the non-league. So how do you get out there and persuade people that you're going to provide a quality experience or quality coaching? And the answer at the end of the day is that's what you lads, to your credit, have done, and done well, and produced with people that they can actually have quality, and they do get good quality. The FA allowed us to deliver, the coaching badges that we delivered to the Chinese coaches, because we worked with the FA on that. Dan, you're moving towards your coach education qualification, which will see you as one of the top guys doing that. So I think you can get quality, and that's one of the things that we have always stressed. And as I say, Liverpool John Moores University, one of the best in the world, and we just leverage off that. So it's the difficulty is people say, well, you're Tranmere Rovers, but actually we're using the same sports science that lots of the top Premier League clubs are using. We've got the same drills and techniques that you go and get if you went into one of the top academies. And so I think the message is that, we're not just like a sports tourism business. We actually do have this elite edge to it, to what we do. And actually for the coaches themselves, even though, some of those coaches that we've sent back to their home country with a coaching qualification will be coaching grassroots or school level or whatever, they massively enjoyed, and they can aspire to, seeing how you use the sports science on a day-to-day basis in the club and how a club's organised, etc. Because these guys come and they're actually at our training base. We keep everything at our main training base. They're not over there in some fields and so forth. They're actually there at the campus. And so, if they're there on the set at the same time, the same schedule sessions, they'll see the pros out there working and so forth. So it's a great environment to comes back to access again. And it comes back to, for us at Tranmere, we try and make sure everything's quality. And that in the other departments and the educational departments and stuff like that, we try and make everything quality. So we fight against the bias that's there, that, we're not a Premier League club, and therefore not Premier League quality. Well, we are. We just don't cost as much.
I think one of especially in North America, in the US and Canada, that we found is a lot of clubs can sort of relate to what we do as a club and how we go about things. So we spoke to a coach in Los Angeles at Laguna United, and he said they're massive in the community and they do a lot of community stuff, and they like to keep it all in-house. They've been approached by massive clubs, your PSGs and Evertons and all these clubs, but they want to be linked with a club that has got that same sense of community that they can relate to. So we'll touch on the first team in a little bit, but how important to you and to Tranmere Rovers is working in the community, working in the local areas with the schools, and how important is the fan base that sort of comes from that as well?
Yeah, it's a massive part. Again, I'm coming back to the sort of the strategy was to, turn around, you create a breathing space. What you do with the breathing space is to extract the organic potential. Then phase 3 is you get involved in capital transactions and so forth. So it's an essential part of the turnaround of the club is to extract all the potential. Now, I played at the club. I went to school not far from the club. I understand what the club is about. And even though I'd been away for 30 years, it was always an essential part of the potential that we needed to extract. Now, again, at the FA, I was always surprised that clubs were always fighting with their supporters' trust, and they were fighting with the local council, when actually at the end of the day, the council is the context within which we live. So it's part of the business strategy that if we use the potential of the club, which is the brand, we can use that brand in a way that, so for example, on conventional services, so we have alternative provision for kids who won't stay in school. And this is the best example I can give you of how you use the brand of a football club. They won't stay in school, but they'll come to us as a football club to be educated. And so we've built an education business on the back of that. And that's now it's about 170 kids. And we get 98%, I think, through to further education or into jobs. Now, they are above average records, again, back to quality. But it's also a way of using the brand of the club whereby, as an unconventional organisation, kids will come. So it's alternative provision kids, which they can't keep in school, actually want to come to us during the school holidays. So that's just a classic example of using the brand. Now, what that gives you is so many things. One, it gives you a council that uses you as a more efficient local delivery vehicle. It likes what you do. It sees what you do. And during COVID, of course, we turned from our conventional community stuff into supporting the community. And in a way that, we use the club now so we can bring in things that other people can't. We've got our fans. Our fans put about 50,000 quid into food and so forth for tickets for kids who are disadvantaged. But in the last couple of months, just over COVID, and we had masses of volunteers who came in. So using the club as a prism, it attracts in all of the latent goodwill of the community, and we then use it for the community on programs. That then creates a great relationship with your council. So that's why, again, it's a business reason why we do this. We don't just do this for altruistic reasons. And another benefit of that is it provides the supporters who are, we've got Liverpool and Everton right on our doorstep, but we have fans who are tremendously proud of the club because of the things that it does and because of the type of club that it is. And so, community is as important as football. And it's not that strange because I come back to this unique footballing geography that is the northwest of England. And if you look at all the clubs and how they were formed and where they were formed out of their community. It was the local church. It was the local working men's club. They're the things that form the clubs that you see today. Everton was a local church. St. Domingo's, can't remember, but they formed the club, and that's a similar story right the way across. So all it is that we're going back to our roots, and that's been particularly successful. I think everybody gets that. Massively important. And, I can see that, if things are developing over in the States, and I don't know the States, you guys know that market far better than me because you've been there, you've seen it, you've been through the college system there, you've been dealt with the colleges, and you're now dealing with the clubs out there. And I get the sense that, the clubs out there are more community clubs. Yeah, you can run around with a Real Madrid shirt on or a Liverpool shirt on. I don't mind if you run around with a Real Madrid or a Liverpool shirt on, as long as we're coaching you, because that's where the value add is. To your kid, as a parent, that's where the value add is. It's the value add is in your discipline and your kid and what he gets out of sport or she gets out of sport. And that's another thing you haven't touched on. Tram has always been a big women's team. In terms of it's where the women's game really sort of is one of the big clubs in the early days of developing the women's game in this country. So, we have Liverpool women training at our training centre again. So again, something that, we've got a good big connection with. So it's a massive part of the club. I think that 20 years ago, the football authorities started to do a lot in terms of community stuff. But the different ethos between this club and other clubs is there they may get £500,000 and they'll spend £500,000 on programs. Here we treat it as an essential part of the fabric of the business, and therefore we have a totally different attitude to it, and we continue to expand it. We continue to develop things, and as a consequence, other things come from that. So we have the Beechwood Sports Centre, which is in a local disadvantaged community, which we're about to open up. The council have handed it over to us, and we'll run our programs from there, and that will make it much more vibrant, not just as a sports centre, but actually it'll become a community centre in itself. And again, that's the type of thing that you build. That's the type of benefits that you get by really living that community aspect of the club. And that, again, it just changes the nature and ethos of the club, and everybody gets to feel it and understand it, and it makes us a different club.
Being plugged into the local community, it certainly it comes across to anybody that comes to visit us. I know not recently, let's talk November 18 now, we had an Indonesian group come to visit us. They heard about our delivery abroad. They knew that we were delivering courses at the campus, plugged into what the youth team and the first team were doing. So it was actually Garuda Select under 17s team that came over to visit the campus. And not only did they get given full access to the football side of things, but using our experience and appreciating them as a culture, we were plugged right into the community. And they said to us, Friday's a huge day, isn't it, in terms of preparation at a football club. So we're there at the campus. We got a fantastic session set up for them, meet the first team staff, etc. No, we don't want to do that. We need to pray. That's time for us. We need to be at the mosque, and it's having those community ties that then enabled us to go to the local mosque in Birkenhead and say, this is what we need, can you help out? And they were absolutely fantastic. Things like the international department just opens up those links that you don't even expect to happen. How was that trip for you? And when we received them all, was that something that sticks out in the memory for you, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I mean, and also the follow on from it, because it's been a massive part of us developing the club further on, and we now have Indonesian investment. We now have, we will be going to an Indonesian manufacturer for our shirts going forwards, which enables us to let the fans help design the shirts, which is difficult when you've got some of the bigger brands who give you like 3 or 4 templates. So in all different ways, it starts to impact on the club, but positively. Yeah, I mean, you touched on the relationship with the mosque. Ibi, the guy who runs the mosque there, has been in contact with us now for 3 years or so, and that's developed. So it was a very natural extension to ask them to help us out, to look after the pastoral needs of the Muslim kids that came along with the Indonesian trip. And so, yes, that worked very well, and again indicates our cultural sensitivity, as it were. But the Indonesian trip and where that's taken the club has been fantastic. We've got a great relationship with the guys, Wandi and Luki from the Santini group. They've been great partners. They now have a 21% stake in the club itself. And you guys went out there, didn't you, in February, and you delivered the tournament out there, and you went to Surabaya City, which is where these kids came from, the first kids came from. And we've maintained our connections with Surabaya out there, and Mayor Risma, who's a fabulous politician out there, and all of a sudden, from nowhere, we've developed a relationship with a country and with some really great people in there, and we've actually got an insight and a window into their culture as well, which again helps us. But Indonesia's a great country in terms of potential, and especially in terms of its football potential. When we saw one lad that we actually quite liked, didn't we? We thought we'd Supriyadi. We wouldn't mind having a look at him properly in the first team, but still a chance. He's about 18 now.
Yeah, be 18, 19.
Yeah. But that's a good thing as well. You guys have kept in touch with him, and kept in touch with the coaches who came over, and so we anticipate that if COVID hadn't happened this year, if the only times people have said that, but if it hadn't happened, we would have had more Indonesian kids over here. We would have further developed what we were delivering out in Indonesia. And I think it's an important thing that we will go out and deliver, as you said earlier on. And that's, if you like, the thing is the taster and gets us in and gets us to understand things. And then we also bring them back to our place when it's appropriate. But you guys have done other things as well, haven't you? We've looked at doing stuff online in COVID. You were a prime guy writing the book for the Chinese education system on football, Dan, which we all took turns to read. Our translation wasn't great, but that's all part and parcel of the good stuff. You've learned how to deal and coach with translators, so it's not that bad. I mean, I know that people sometimes need translators for Scousers, but that's another aspect that adds to us. So the international business adds to us as much as we add to other people, because you've been out coaching in Hainan, you've been out coaching through translators, etc. And the translation for Indonesia, for me, it was quite simple. We've got some great guys from the universities. You've got some great universities here as well. So it's those linkages again that are here and make us much more amenable. We've actually got lots of the facilities for putting people up, because the universities are 10 minutes away from our training pitches, which is it's fantastic.
And in terms of, you mentioned it previously, and if there's a lad wearing a Real Madrid shirt or a Liverpool shirt, as long as we're coaching him, then that's all that matters. But because our track record in bringing players through is something that the club takes a lot of pride of. You've got Aaron Cresswell, who's at West Ham United, who came through the Tranmere setup. Tom Davies at Everton came through the setup. So when we're out in America, we often get commented on how not only the Tranmere sort of style, but how we integrate with the local culture. And we've talked about that quite a lot. But in terms of the history of the club in bringing players through and the quality, and I know there's a sort of a new plan for player recruitment. What's the sort of way in which we bring players through? What's the feeling that you get from players as they start to come through from 17, 18, and 3 players got offered professional contracts in the summer, which is again a great success for Parky, the academy manager, and all of those guys. So how do you feel we sort of relate on that point as well, and in terms of the quality in bringing players through?
I think the game changes as you go through at a professional and an elite level, and the EPPP system in this country, I don't think has been fair with smaller clubs, as it were. And what I want to do is to focus on, in terms of the elite development, is to focus on that key area that happens. And I was a director of British Judo, and one of the things I helped write the plan for the elite performance development. And the key thing that strikes you is that whenever you get to a certain stage in your it's probably in your teenage years, the key thing is the amount of competition you get and the level of competition you get and the time that you get it in terms of your development. I think where we are at this point in time, some of the major clubs will hold on to players because they've got the cash to do it now rather than release them. And the focus of development for us will move further up that chain to older kids. And I actually think that that's probably the most important area, because one is I think it's the psychological makeup. You can get people to the same level physically. You can probably get people to the same level technically in terms of fulfilling their potential. And there's lots of coaching that will do that. But the final thing, there's an order qualifier and there's an order winner. The order qualifiers are physicality, athleticism, and technique, and a bit of game nous as well. The order winner is attitude and resilience and stuff like that. And I think that's where we will be looking in the future to make our edge, is in developing players. The recruitment that we've just done for the first team hasn't just happened. We do a lot now in terms of researching the backgrounds of the people that are coming in, because that dynamic in the dressing room is massively important. I've been in many dressing rooms and all my life. And I know that that's one of the biggest single factors that, when you're down, you're down. When you're down, you've got players who've got the mental courage to show for the ball. You know, it's easy playing in the Sunday league or something when you've got no crowd and, you know, you want to get on the ball, etc. But do you want to get on the ball on a Tuesday night in January when the rain's coming down? You can hear every single shout and you're 1-0 down at home. And instead of going there for a ball, you stay just about there. The guy can't get it to you. And believe me, that happens. So that mental toughness, that resilience. And when I did scouting for clubs at times, I used to go and look for that in a player because I could see that a mile away. That, you know, to the crowd sometimes they can't see that the guy's hiding and not helping his mate out. And that mental resilience and toughness is actually one of the main aspects and attributes that I think the Tranmere a Tranmere player should have. That's the bare minimum. That you'll go the 90 minutes, you'll show for the 90 minutes, and so forth. That's what the Tranmere fans expect, and that's part of the culture. And that's what being a Tranmere player means, and that's what we want in the dressing room. And that, I think, will be something that we will try and inculcate in the kids as we bring them through. It's difficult to do that on a snapshot in terms of people coming here, but you know, they'll get to see, feel, and touch that when they're around the same training ground as the professionals, and they'll see where that is. We have a phrase in the club, and that's "better never sleeps," and that's it. You know, every player. In fact, I'm about to talk to Hodgie, who's the new head of medical and sports science, about personal development plans. You know, we have personal development plans in our academy for kids. I see absolutely no reason why the personal development should stop effectively once you become a pro. Which I would say, as part of the criticism of the English game, that's one of the things that happens. You know, for the very best and the top players, they're constantly out trying to improve on everything that they can do to get that tiny edge that they can get. So, yes, we've done a lot in the past, but we can't live in the past. We need to move forward into the future. You know, and I think that I come back to it again. You know, Tranmere Rovers is Tranmere Rovers, and that means quality as much as anything else in everything that we do. The best that we can do, be the best that we can.
I think what you said.
I'm preaching now, so I'll stop.
And in terms of the other aspects, not just the technical side of the game, but the awareness and everything. Because I remember, Dan, you probably remember as well, in America when we set up a session, and we were doing a warm up, and the warm up was all focused to what it's all part of the 4-corner model: the psych, the technical, the social, and the physical. And the warm up was aimed more towards the social and the physical and the psych, and then we added the ball in to make it a bit more technical and tactical. But we heard a parent on the side, and I think they asked you, didn't they, what's this got to do with soccer or football? What's this got to do with it? And you're like, well, there's more to it than just the receiving the ball. You've got to be all the different aspects that go into it. And I think that's going over to America and Canada. That's what I found is that part of the game is something that when we go over, they love that side of things, love to understand more and how we coach things over here in the UK and how we can implement it in the States.
Yeah, one of the difficulties, we talked about it this morning, earlier on when we were talking about some stuff we're doing in China. One of the difficulties is that, you know, if you're trying to develop that holistic coach who develops that holistic player, and he's in a system whereby, well, we're only getting judged on whether we win or we don't win, which is what the English system was trapped in for many years. You then start to lose a little bit because you know you won't get the best out of the kids. You won't get the kids to the best, and it degenerates then into physicality. You know, so those kids who are big at 14 and 15 are suddenly heroes at 14 and 15, and then when they come up into higher levels and then get older, they start to lose out because technically they're not as adept and not as good. Those kids that can answer questions, to use a famous manager who's just left here, who can make decisions for themselves on the pitch. You know, for me, actually, I've always been a big one into, you know, the kid will go the extra mile and dig in and stuff like that. But then I come from a different era, but it's still as relevant today. And I still think that's the one thing that, you know, you have to try and get to. So you've got to develop all those things. You know, I've seen very few teams whereby a kid's won the league on his own. You know, so teamwork is essential. And then if you stand back far enough and say, well, it's a sport, and what does it give you? It gives you all those things that you need in life. You know, teamwork. You've got to work through people. There's only so many hours in a day. You've got to work through people, and therefore you need to have the ability to teamwork. You need the empathy. You need the fact that sometimes you're going to have to support people when they're not having a good day. You know, he's miscontrolled the ball. And I remember when I played, and partly it was a conscious decision, but partly it's because I know what it feels like. I never criticised the player. Maybe once or twice if I thought they were hiding, but I never criticised the player if he miscontrolled the ball or did this or did that, because I know he didn't want to make a mistake. Certainly not in front of a crowd, he didn't. But sometimes, and sometimes parents are the worst. They're sitting on the sideline and they're chipping in the coach's ear. And the worst letters I used to get at the FA were the ones complaining about what parents did on the line. And it's very difficult because on the one hand, you've got to respect their enthusiasm and the fact that they're bringing their kids to play a game like this. But the other hand, they need to step back a bit and not try and live through the kid. And again, it's not something we preach here. We're into the ethics of how you do it. It's not something we preach, but it is one of those things that I think gets missed. That there has to be a way of, you train a guy physically, you train a guy technically. So whatever else happens, well, you have to train a guy to play in a team, and what that means in terms of, you've got to teach him that. It's fairly logical. If not, you have a pretty sort of one-dimensional or two-dimensional kid, as opposed to 3 or 4 dimensions, 4 corners.
Yep. No, exactly, and I think the 4-corner model is something that we all resonate with day in, day out. And when we go abroad, be it China and Indonesia, I know the Chinese, they're very much, we want to be Guardiola straight away, and we want to learn this session straight away, and they're nowhere near that. And when it came to futsal and futsal to fields, I know we had a couple of sessions where they just didn't really quite grasp it because they wanted that. But you then get the American side where they are wanting to further their understanding on the social side, and physically they're definitely all there on the physical side of things. But it's just all the different corners in the game. I think we've got it pretty well measured out here in the UK. So it's understanding that and taking it abroad and working with the cultures and the coaches and the players to try and implement it in a better way in their environment.
Yeah, I mean, again, that was the subject of the conversation Dan and I had a couple of hours ago about what we were going to do in terms of getting. There's a clutch of coaches that's being presented to us in China that they want us to produce the online stuff for, and we can do that. But the first thing that occurs to me is, well, if you're doing that, what level are they at? What do they want to achieve? And sometimes it's difficult because. And I've seen it in organisations. Sometimes they tick boxes rather than actually get to the guts of what you really want to deliver. What's the outputs? And it may be that we'll get 50 odd coaches through this course, and that's them done, and off they go. And that's the difficulty. That if we come in, we're trying to always make a difference to those coaches, but they'll go back into a big system that is didactic, that is based on, well, let's get results. At professional level, yes, let's get results. But, at school level, it's about, well, what does results mean? Does it mean winning games? Does it mean developing kids physically? Does it mean developing kids, mentally and so forth? So that's the type of stuff that, again, we just glibly touched on it and said we're culture friendly because of the experiences that we've had over the years. But I think the reality is we do seek to try and give not just a tick in the box while you've got a coaching badge, but actually we do try to give them something that's practical. And I know we talked about many times to both of you that what coaches really like are, some more sessions and stuff like that. And you dole them out by you've got millions of them. So you keep them going.
Oh, it's really interesting. When we talk about the different sides of the game, when you mentioned the psychological side, we talked to Sam Mickelson at Laguna. And while as a club, they're plugged in to the community, and Tranmere really stood out for them as a like-minded club. When you hear him speak and he understands the psychological importance of stuff, and it just resonates when your owner, when your chairman, understands the same thing. And when you mention China, when you talk about, 20, 25 years ago, British football was probably stuck in a little bit of a rut when it comes to developing players in terms of results, probably mattered a little bit too much lower down. Whereas we're able to have the foresight, if you like, when we're working with the Chinese, because we know we know it's important. We know results are important because, like you said, you need to know, how to learn to win, how to learn to, to take a defeat, for example. But what's really surprising for me is that it doesn't matter where you go in the world, that people have similar values. And we're fortunate, really fortunate as a department, to be partnered up with people who have those values. I'd say, next question for me would be something along the lines of, is it a case of just throwing Tranmere out there, or we've got to be, do we have to be a little bit more targeted with people that we decide to work with?
Yeah, I think we have to be targeted with people we decide to work with, because at the end of the day, you may have recalled, I went out to various institutions in China who wanted to work with us, and we didn't work with them in the end, probably because we never got to a position. There were some significant organisations, and I won't embarrass them, but they wouldn't define exactly what they wanted. And if they couldn't define exactly what they wanted, it was going to be difficult for us to deliver. And it was, well, did they want the kudos and be able to tick the box that they've got a number of foreign coaches because that's what they were required to have? Or did they actually really want to start making a difference to the coaches that they've got and so forth? And there was really, as soon as we got that sort of flabby response, then we've backed away from quite a few in that regard. So I think we've always been a little bit selective as to how we did things. I mean, that cuts across what I was saying before about being tactically agile, because when they said, I said, look, you can do this, but you'd layer a carpet of futsal across the country is the most efficient way to get your base level up, because it's an automatic coach. And they said, fine, but can we have 3 coaches? The answer was we went 3 coaches out to these places, because that was the way of opening the door. And then in opening the door, I think we've enlightened them in a few ways, which I think the more forward thinking of them actually get, and that's why we're still involved. And that's why a couple of hours ago we were talking about how we can still get involved in Hohhot and in Mongolia, even though our 3-year memorandum of understanding has officially run out at the beginning of the COVID period. So, but as we have limited resources, therefore we have to make sure that we use them properly. You guys, there's not many of you, and we will grow the cadre of coaches once COVID goes, and we know the way we do things. We know what we do on the way out, and we've got our own way of doing it. But it's always flexible and culture friendly. But yeah, we can't afford. How can I put it this way? When I was working at PwC, we used to say, you didn't really want to be with the wrong clients, and we used to have a project acceptance committee, which used to look at a client before we took it on and said, are we going to have this client or not? And if we felt that it was going to cause reputational damage, we wouldn't go with the client. And I think that's the same attitude that, even though we haven't articulated that way, we've had here. That's important,
Yeah, no, definitely, 100%. I think especially in Indonesia, I wouldn't say locked out, because it came from the work that we put in with the group that came over, and then it just came from a TV crew coming to Prenton Park one day, and they did a little piece on Tranmere Rovers, and it sort of escalated. But in the end, the guys in Indonesia, myself and Dan met them, got to really know them and their families back in February, and they're some of the nicest people that you could possibly meet. So with them sort of pushing the boat for Tranmere as well, and yourself, I know, conscious of time as well, what sort of is then the vision for you for the club, for Tranmere? Because the last 3 or 4 years have been mad. 2 promotions, 1 unfortunate demotion, which was out of our hands, and the way it all went about. But what's the sort of plan for the club moving forward, in the sort of first team level and globally as well?
Yeah, I mean, I came here when the club was in terminal decline, and I can say that because I was, used to run business regeneration for PricewaterhouseCoopers, so I've seen more failing companies than you can shake a stick at. But the turnaround's done, so we've actually got to the point whereby, and that's been proven, I think, by the amount of hits we took in the last year, well, not even a year. The pitch going down, even the double promotion, we managed to digest that, and we were turning the corner on that quite dramatically. We were hit with COVID then, which then took the guts out of a lot. I mean, we rely on gates more than the Premier League do. The international business, we couldn't travel, couldn't do the stuff that we wanted to do. People couldn't travel. So we were hit badly by that. And then, of course, the EFL in their wisdom throw it open to a naked vote and we get demoted out of the league. So we've taken a lot of hits in that time. Collapse of the pitch, of course, again, which is a very costly issue in the middle of the season. So we've taken a lot of hits, but the fact that we've taken a lot of hits and we can survive those hits quite easily, and we're moving on, shows that the turnaround's basically done. So we've got some resilience in the club. The next stage is to get us to fulfill our potential, and that is, I think, we can genuinely be a self-sustainable League One club without a doubt. And that then creates a platform for further development. And we've got programs and stuff. And whether I'm the person to take it on because I'm getting a bit old, but we at least will have a platform here at the club to take it further forwards. And I think I've shown already that if you want to be a championship club, you've got to change the business plan a bit. And I think that's linked around a new stadium and a stadium move. And then as I say to everybody, because ambition's the lifeblood of the game, if you're in the championship, you're only 6 games away from the Premiership. Last few games of the season, sneak into the playoffs, win the playoffs, you're in. So, but I tell you what, ambition is the lifeblood of the game. Every time I played, I put my boots on or whatever, or got in the car and drove to the ground or whatever. You wanted to win that game, and if you didn't, then you shouldn't have been doing it. So I think that but the ambition has to be realistic. It has to be measured. And one of the questions you did ask me before, how do you deal with things as the chairman of a club when you've got all kinds of pulls this way and that way? It's essentially it's a business at the end of the day, and it's the same business as any other. If you don't earn as much as you spend, you go bust eventually. There are slight differences, and one is the fact that the decisions that you take and make are in the public eye, and so and that has been exacerbated even at this level by things like social media. So whilst in certain cases when you're running a business you don't actually tell your opposition what you're trying to do, there's a social media thirst, for example, for you to do that. Who you're interested in buying, what you're doing about the manager, the things we've just gone through. Well, it's absolutely nuts for me to be saying to them, well, actually, I'm thinking of signing Otis Khan, or I'm looking to sign Jay Spearing. Why would I do that? And then somebody who's quite interested in him, the race is in, and then the price goes up and stuff like this and that and the other. So these are things that you just got to accept that social media is. I don't like it. I think that we've just got the balance right, which is that you need to be cognizant of it without a slave to it. And Nikki, the vice chairman, she does all of that. She likes that stuff. And I'd rather keep in the background and just when it's appropriate to speak. But just be aware of things. But social media never drives any decision that I make as a man. And a long time ago, again, when I was at the FA, and every morning by about 10 o'clock, my door would burst open with the director of communications and David Davis, who I used to call the director of light entertainment at the FA. They used to burst in and say, "Oh, yeah, this, that, and the other," and there was a crisis. And after about a month of this, I worked it out, and I went. And they came in through the door again, and I was just about my second cup of coffee of the morning. I'd say, David, analyze, don't dramatize. And so everything that happens, you analyze it and you work it out. People saying the manager's got to go, and you sit down and you're always looking at it, and you say, okay, first thing is if somebody's got to go, you've got to go from something, you've got to go to something better. Okay, so what's better? And then you look at the risk in it, and then you say, well, actually, what's the job in hand? And just take, for example, Mickey this January. What was the job in hand? We need a new manager, and we got the run into the season. So I'm looking at this, and I'm thinking, I've got a manager who's brought the players in that he's brought in. If I bring a new manager in, he comes in and he says, well, they're not my players. He's got a get out of jail free card. He's going to come in extremis. He'll drive a hard bargain, and then he'll probably bin all the players. And if we go down, we go down. It's not his fault, and so forth and so on. I've also got a manager who's got out of this league, well, who's done run-ins and second half of the season, which is a different dynamic, and done it well. So why would I suddenly go and try and find somebody else who could come in and would guarantee me a better result than a man I know, who knows his players, who's helping us trying to sign the players we were signing in the window, and give it to somebody else? When you sit down and look at it like that, you think, well, sod that for a game of soldiers. And it's about that. You analyse everything and you work out what's best, and you don't let the amateur dramatics drag you this way or that way, and you then have to just sort of grin and bear it. Well, I don't really look at that much social media, so it doesn't make that much difference.
Yeah. Is that a plea to Tranmere fans to stop tweeting you on social media?
Not at all, because at the end of the day, and Nicky and I always say this, at the end of the day, it is apathy would kill us. And the fact that people feel passionately about their club is great. The only thing I'd say is, is the tweet more about them than the club? Probably in a lot of cases it is, but then so what? It's their individual opinion. But does it help the club? Sometimes it would get you down because you're struggling with things day in and day out, and then you just ask for a bit of common sense. People know that I'm in France, but this day and age everybody's working like we are now on Zoom and stuff like that. Do they think a manager's been signed and somebody picked up the phone and said, by the way, we just signed Jacko as the new manager? Or do they think I've done 7 hours of interviewing him? And do they think that all these players have just been Scotch mist, have just appeared and happened to turn up one day and sign at the club? Or do they think we due diligence them? So at the end of the day, I've said it on a recent call that people shouldn't take no news as no work being done. And there is a balance between getting the right level of communication with fans. And that's one of the difficulties of running a football club. But then, I chose to do it, so I don't complain about it.
Well, it's certainly given us all some incredible experience. Definitely day to day at the club, but also abroad. I mean, I don't think myself or Dan 4 years ago could have believed the experiences we would have had in China, Indonesia, and US and Canada. It's been a whirlwind, but there's still.
You guys, it's a credit to you what you've built, you've been a fundamental part of that. And I think that when you stand back, I always say this about the guys I work with. Have a look at your CV in a few years' time when you've worked with us and see what it is. And I think your CVs have moved on massively from where they were.
Yeah, well, I'd certainly put down working with yourself as one in the CV. I'm not too sure. Anyway, that's one of those things.
What are you talking about? No, it's been fun, and that's the main thing, isn't it? It's been real fun. You've seen something grow. That you give value, and you've made a lot of friends with a lot of people abroad, and that to me is, it's a testament to you. It's a testament to the club and the way you do things. So it's good. And
again, just to tie things up, it just speaks volumes for Mark as an owner, as the chairman, to come on and be so transparent in the way that every department of the club inside out, what we're about as an international department. You're very much up to date with the people that we're dealing with and potential partnerships that we're striking up in the States. So thanks very much for your time today, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate it. And for the rest of you guys out there, hope to see you soon.
Yeah, I think we might need to do another one with yourself, because I think we could have gone on for another hour. But
that's always the case, mate. I'm told it was only 40 minutes, and it's not long enough.
But we've still got some more to come. We're going to keep them going. We've got hopefully get the gaffer on, a few of the players, and some more of the coaching staff, and then some other coaches abroad as well. So and then also some our friends in Indonesia and Valentino, and hearing what they have to say. So still a lot more to come. But if there's any questions that anyone's got from abroad, then fire them in, because we'll certainly be able to ask you Mr. Chairman, and we'll get the sort of sent over and responses. So if anyone's got any questions, then.
Brilliant.
But thanks again. That's much appreciated. A lot of fun in the last hour. Went very quickly.
Thanks, guys. Thanks a lot.